The child was born but couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts. The poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. With Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talked for hours. It was a barefoot history in this land of flowers.
The week that was on the 20th of January 2018. The news. The government is closed. It's out of business. Otherwise known as the Trump shutdown. The government is officially shut down. The Republicans were discombobulated and could not, as they say, get the necessary 60 votes to bring about closure in the Senate on a Friday night. Thus, the government has shut down. And the big game now is the blame game. Several polls have shown that the Trump administration, the impasse will lie with them. One of the problems is when you furlough 800,000 government workers, close hundreds of government functions, including most of the national parks, the Trump administration has tried to minimize the closure, but you can't really do that. And also looking at, I'm reading at the Washington Post here, a government shutdown was 100% unavoidable, completely unavoidable. It is now immense. That's from old man McConnell, the majority leader from Kentucky. People across the aisle, some of our Democratic colleagues, are feeling very proud of themselves. But what has their filibuster accomplished? The answer is simple. Their very own government is shut down. Well, the problem here is the Republicans have used the shutdown option many times in the 90s and in 2013. And they've also used it in state legislatures. Nothing new about that. The problem here is you had basic items, immigration. Several of the senators had worked on immigration there, including the old man McCain, and it was dropped by the Republican Party. There was another article in the Post talking about the hard right the Republican Party has taken. Lindsey Graham was the one I was talking about. They had drafted a Dreamers bill by Senator Durbin of Illinois and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. But old McConnell double-crossed him. And said, well, any Dreamer bill would have to be the one that DJ Trump supported. Well, at this point, we agree we can't wait for the White House anymore. That is from Jeff Flake. And he is a senator from Arizona. But nonetheless, they took the path. They had offered the child health care program, CHIPS, with a 6-year extension there, and delay of some unpopular health care tax. I believe what they mean by those are taxes on medical accessories, heart valves, etc., which should be taxed. But nonetheless, from the Post article of the Democratic leader Schumer and Trump over cheeseburger lunch. I guess he didn't go to Mickey D's. They're now cooking cheeseburgers at the White House. So he went around them to deal with the Democratic leader directly. And there's some Democrats here we didn't expect to get their votes. Poor Claire McCaskill, she's in Missouri, a red state. So she voted against it. Heidi can't. She's in North Dakota. The Dreamers wouldn't affect North Dakota very much at all. And Meacham of West Virginia, with the racist climate in West Virginia, these are Democrats. And Joe Donnelly, the sheriff out of Indiana. Those are Democrats that voted in favor, plus Doug Jones. Now, what does this mean for the Democratic Party? Well, what it does mean, on some issues, these people are not reliable. There's no doubt about that. And Doug Jones, of course, representing his state, he emphasized his support for the CHIP program, which they need the CHIP program in Alabama. There's no doubt about that. But Debbie Stabenow, she's out of Michigan, and Gary Peters, they voted against the short-term measure and go to a long-term measure. 4 Republicans did also. Flake and Mike Lee, he's out of Utah. Rand Paul and Lindsey Graham. So those are 4 that stood on principle, and that is the end of that period. So now they have to go back to the drawing board. The government is closed down. In an ABC interview, Schumer said, we could do the same thing on immigration. We could say we're shutting down the government. We're not going to raise the debt ceiling until you pass immigration reform. It would be government chaos. Well, I'm not sure, but he said that, but he probably did. That was in 2013 when the Republicans shut down government. But this was more about the Dreamers program, and this is the way the monopoly press is casting this particular vote. It was about a long-term as opposed to short-term debt fix. Now, it doesn't make sense to have these 2-day and 4-week debt ceiling fix when you can just fix the whole thing. And that what will happen this time. They will come to an agreement. Will they come to an agreement this weekend? Very hard to say. But in the next few days and weeks, they will eventually be forced to come to an agreement, which will mean the deferred action for childhood arrivals will be part of it. Now, will the Democrats get all that they want? It's very difficult to say these days how that can be cast. There's several ways they could do it. But this situation in shutting down the government, well, there were 4 Republicans also that voted there. So that takes some of the sting out of that. Posturing took place mainly in front of reporters, missing with a theory of backs and forth negotiation that preceded the 16-day showdown in 2013 when Republican leaders sought to roll back the Affordable Care Act. Many people have forgotten about that. Met several times with President Obama to seek an accommodation shortly after 6 p.m. The Senate Majority Whip, John Cornyn, he's from Texas, looked at his watch and vented frustration. Government shut down in about 5 hours and so forth and so on. There's no solution. I don't know whether Senator Schumer is just determined to take it down, obviously, and that was not the case. visibly only Graham shuttered back and forth between Republicans and Democratic offices. Shopping proposals replaced the 4-week furlough extension passed with a much shorter one. They were talking about just a few days to fix this, effectively a weekend fix. Well, the whole situation is they will now have the weekend fix. If they want to fix it this weekend, they can before government in earnest takes up on Monday. They don't say here, but I imagine DJ Trump is on his way to Florida. Senator Kamala Harris, she's of California, and thinking of running for president. This is a movement. We are going to have some good days. We are going to have some bad days. But like every movement that has allowed our country to progress, we are going to have to fight. There's no way around this. The Women's March, we reported from the Sacramento Bee last night that it is going on, and in many communities, people in the streets, but more so, they're active doing the grassroots work that has to be done, and that's what most people don't understand. I noticed Cindy Sheehan, Cindy's always talking there, but she did have a valuable point about the women's movement, the electoral activity, but this was specific to the Democratic Party, that the Democratic Party was running a lot of rednecks. Well, definitely they are running Army Rangers, and they are running SEALs, etc., but not all of those people are rednecks. But now we do have some conservative Democrats, not very many anymore, in the Senate. I'm thinking of Joe Meacham there, but he's an honorable man. We've supported him in the past. The sheriff down in Indiana, I'm not certain about him, Donnelly. He's been around a long time. Claire McCaskill is a good person, but in Missouri, can Claire get back in? Well, she did manage to get reelected. But again, that situation was the Republicans took themselves out. But if we look at other footings, very difficult to say. Now, this is from Jenna Rubin. She's a Republican. Events moved in favor of Democrats today in a battle to gain leverage and cast the blame for looming shutdown. This is before the shutdown that these aforementioned Republicans have come out there, Graham, etc. And his DJ Trump's asshole countries didn't help him. And it's pointed out in her article, he spent a third of his presidency at his properties, and when he's not there, he's there in spirit anyway. So it really doesn't matter very much about that. The DECA situation, that's a kind of an interesting situation involving these young people. It is more of a business initiative. That's one thing people have to understand. These young people have grown up here, and many of them have technical and academic training. And there's a business interest to retain them within the country. It's that simple. It's not just something that these young people were political refugees. They were, for the most part, economic refugees. And that's one of the things to remember. But the final, therefore, leaving the vote at, 48, of course, Senator McCain is recuperating. So he had to get the Democratic votes, but he lost Republican votes. Therefore, it was the end. From Kentucky Connect, established by Governor Beshear. This Blevin character has got permission from the Trump administration. This is on Medicaid to put in a work requirement and various other schemes to effectively throw people off of the rolls of Medicaid in the state of Kentucky. And it names several people here. There's little doubt more approval is ahead before becoming the CSM administrator. This Seymour Vemer was a consultant who helped design Kentucky's plan, traveled to Frankfurt that week to coach the governor's aide. So she's now, that's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So they've been working on this. An estimated 394,000 Kentuckians. This is the state's officials' most recent snapshot of how many of the 1.4 million Medicaid recipients are able-bodied, 19 to 64, who would not be exempt because of the circumstances such as pregnancy, schooling, medical frailty, or disability. They expect, this is in Kentucky, that 264 will not be compliant when the rules begin in July and November. So this is the governor there when Governor Beshear employed the 2010 law to spread insurance more widely than nearly every other state. And this is the Affordable Care Act, because Kentucky Connect, they had an excellent program. And this is just basically what he's doing, is a hodgepodge of schemes. And from the officials there, roughly about 100,000 fewer Kentuckians will be on Medicaid by the end of the 5 years as a result of the new rule. There will be more than that. This work requirement is 80 hours a month. Job training, volunteering, caregiving, etc. The plan says Kentucky will assess whether the area, now there's some areas of the state that are so poverty-stricken that they would not be there. Kara Stewart, a leading critic and lawyer at Kentucky Equal Justice Center, says there are too many unknowns. She is not even sure which patients will fall outside the work requirement. State officials say the plan refers to minors, meaning children up to 18. She fears it might align with the section of the federal Medicaid rules that include only children 6 and younger. So there's a lot of things involved here, and they give some personal histories of people. The Medicaid change has proponents. The predatory Goodwill Industries, a sham operation in my opinion, Kentucky endorsed them because they are in sync with the mission. In other words, they would force people to go to work at these salaries at the Goodwill Industries. Kentucky will need to step up and make sure support are available. State officials must be realistic at how long changing lives take. Well, they're not interested in this. Once they get these people off of the Medicaid rolls, getting them back on will be very, very difficult, because many people will be sick, many people will be addicted, and they just simply will not be able to go there. From Rand Paul, the gentleman that lived next door to him, the retired doctor, is going to plead Bocher is going to plead guilty to assaulting a member of Congress. And he can get, 21 months sentence there. If our arithmetic is correct, it's almost 2 years for assaulting Rand Paul in his yard. Supposedly it was a disagreement over the leaves and what have you, but they're trying to say it was for political reasons. One other story here, Stormy Daniels, as she's called, and her affair with DJ Trump. We'll just put this article on from In Touch. You can look at it and see what is going on. I suppose get the In Touch magazine. On the cover it says, "My affair with Donald." He was sitting on the bed, and we started to kiss. Well, so what? I mean, this kind of tabloid article is the kind of thing that he promised to get her a spot on The Apprentice. And the question here, will his wife file for divorce? I can answer that question. No, she will not file for divorce. And then they even have OJ here. OJ finally taking paternity tests to see if he is the father of one of the young ladies here. Kalo, I suppose is the name. One of the Kardashian kids, Bob Kardashian, was a friend of OJ's and was one of the people involved in the OJ trial. He is unfortunately deceased at this moment. Anyway, Stephanie Clifford is actually Stormy's actual name here. Let me get this one in here so I can get it up. Mike Tyson, his one-man show, he's been doing a number of these. This is from the Honolulu Star Advertiser. On the 18th of January, former heavyweight boxer Mike Tyson brings his no-holds-barred one-man show to Bleasdale Concert Hall this weekend. It's about a lot of controversial things. It's about a lot of funny things, he said, in a call from his home in Henderson, Nevada. And I have an associate that lives in Henderson. I call it the greatest hits. People should be glad he's out of boxing the ring and behind the mic. Tyson still works out and looks trim after once weighing 300 pounds. Well, Mike Tyson's not very tall either. After all that has been said and done, what is fascinating with Tyson, considered that the 14th best heavyweight of all time from Ring Magazine. Hey, I wish I knew, he said. I don't get it, but you probably got a better grip on it than I do. In his prime, Tyson, no doubt, was a bruiser. He was a fearsome boxer. He won 19 fights by knockouts. Trevor Brebick and Leon Spinks, and those were not pushover fighters. Lasted less than 2 hours. Tyson, as a boxer, was on his way to becoming, at age 20 and 4 months, the youngest boxer ever to unify the boxing titles, the World Boxing Council and World Boxing Association, International Boxing Federation. His life was marred, of course, by controversies. No doubt some of the things that Mike Tyson was accused of doing and got him in prison for the so-called rape conviction in the mid-90s. That was in Indiana. After making a comeback to boxing, he fought Evander Holyfield. That was in 1997, which forever be remembered when Tyson took several bites out of his ear. There were several unsavory incidents and arrests for an assault, for financial difficulties, and a 2003 bankruptcy. But nonetheless, Tyson also endured a tough personal experience. His 4-year-old daughter died in a treadmill accident in 2009. Remember that? That was also the year that the public would consider Tyson on a comeback with a memorable appearance on the hit comedy Hangover. Tyson said he's been through several rounds of rehab and counseling before turning his life around. According to CNN, he emerged from bankruptcy only this decade. I would not doubt that either. Inspired by his one, Mike Tyson, incidentally, has always been a very, very talented man. He was a talented boxer, he's always been very, very articulate, and he was slandered, in our opinion, by racial stereotypes. People saying, well, Mike Tyson, has a very attention deficit, very low IQ, etc. Was not the case. Mike Tyson is now showing that he's a very intellectually bound person, artistic person. He's been incidentally on Broadway with the show. He had it on Broadway once there. His wife, Kiki, wrote, she talked to me and told her things about my life, and she put it down in a chronological order. It came out as a book, but really we are just trying to entertain some people at these shows. Tyson said, who at this point said he told her to downplay his rough upbringing. Filmmaker Spike Lee came on board and wound up directing the title The Undisputed Truth, which drawn the heavyweight champion match. It's a Las Vegas opening draw, a celebrity crowd, with George Lopez and Rosie O'Donnell, the American Idol judge, Paul Abdul, hadn't heard of her in a long time, was in attendance at it. The show drew mixed responses, with the LA Times saying it documented Tyson's roller coaster career and well-documented personal turmoil, with additional dimensions that came as a surprise from a guy whose fist did the talking most of his life, a clarity that allowed him to own the most sordid chapter of his past. So that's from the San Francisco Chronicle. Mildly amused at first, incredulous. His show continues to draw fans around the world. It is played in places like Paris, Monte Carlo, Durban, sold out its run we were talking about on Broadway after facing a matter of criticism in the past. He doesn't worry so much about it now. I'm a human being and people are going to have their opinions, he said. I have my opinions about people too. That is what's going to be. But if I have a problem, an opinion themselves, if they don't tell me that in front of my face, that tells you what kind of person they are. In his latest show, The Undisputed Truth Round 2, he dives further into Tyson's story, but it's also funny. So that's good. It's entertaining to people, too. The show is more forward-looking, with Tyson discussing his future, his name, his draw power, leading to budding entertainment career with appearances on the Hangover films, and the animated series, Mike Tyson's Mysteries. I didn't know he had one there. He said he just completed shooting another film, Kickboxer 2. So, in other words, like this old wise teacher who looked up his really disgusting prison, probably in Bangkok somewhere, he said, I'm teaching the gyms young fighters how to fight and how to get his mindset. I like the guru guy. He also has a book coming out, no doubt, about Gus Castamata. I remember Gus Castamata's first manager. Castamata was a father figure. He described his childhood as wild and untamed, with dozens of arrests before he reached his teenage years. Castamata died early in Tyson's career. Many people say that Gus lived, he would have had a much better career. Even now, it is a big loss, Tyson said. He knew how to talk to me, and he constantly talked about having goals and about being the world champion. Mike Tyson is now 51. I didn't realize that. He enjoys the fact that people still pay attention to what he's doing, and asked about recent reports that he is part of a project to promote marijuana use in California. Oh, you saw that. I thought it was a good business deal, and so I loaned my name to it. Having had his own problems stemming from behavior with women, he sees the current outpour of stories about men in power abusing women as a good thing. That's good that Mike Tyson talks about this. I think it is good what the ladies are doing, he said, and you have to look at it and respect it for what it is. It has to be dealt with, and what comes out to, and whoever's response. Well, Mike Tyson has a different attitude, and that's very good, that he's encouraging these women to come out with the past problems. Many of these people, including DJ Trump, is only discussed it in a very arrogant way. And this is about more than just the defamation on women. It's the whole idea of women's roles in a society, a matter of disrespect. And this is what permeates the whole situation until us men, come to grips with that. We definitely have problems. The idea of treating women as a property is a very bad idea. And if a woman treats a man as property, it's a very bad idea also. But in a capitalist society, as we'll see, as this stormy, what Daniels thing appears here, being in the adult entertainment industry. It is an exploitive industry, no doubt about that, and I don't know what DJ Trump's take on it was, but it's a sorry excuse for the industry. Let's just leave it at that. But it would not be an industry out there if people did not watch the films. And we've seen a few in our lifetime too. But beyond that is nowadays you have more than just, say, some films that come out. You have an old industry. We have in any major city gentlemen's clubs that men can go to from 18 to 90, I suppose, and sat there and whatever else that transpires in the gentlemen's clubs. They formalize themselves. They used to be, in my day, early days, a strip joint. And that was something big to see someone dancing up there with parts of the body covered. Then they went fully nude, and then they went from there to there. Anyway, we're not here to talk about all that mess. Let's go to Uncle Carl Robe and NAFTA and the farmers. We wouldn't want to forget about Uncle Carl here. Oops. Where is Uncle Carl? Here we go. He's writing in the Wall Street Journal on the 18th of January. Killing NAFTA would ruin American farmers. In the Wall Street Journal interview last week, DJ Trump said if he were to terminate the North American Free Trade Agreement, it would be frankly positive for the country. His bluster would be could be a negotiating ploy before the trilateral NAFTA talks is set in Montreal on the 28th this month. If not, Trump should stop threatening, and a withdrawal from NAFTA would immediately kill American jobs while handing the Democrats a silver platter. Well, many people in the Democratic Party, including in labor unions and those at this mic, are opposed to NAFTA because the way it was negotiated in 1980, President Carter demolished farm counties with his embargo of grain to the Soviet Union. This was a bad policy. Was bad politics, bad policy. At least he was trying to punish an adversary. If Trump kills NAFTA, he would be damaging red states to undermine allies. NAFTA is especially important to the American farmer and rancher. U.S. agriculture exports to Mexico and Canada were at $8.9 billion in 1993. Before it kicked in, today it's $39 billion, accounting for 30% of American farm exports. These exports are critical in many states. In North Dakota, of course, they're now in the fracking racket, which Trump won by 36 points. Republicans want to flip the Senate seat held by Heidi Heitkamp. But the Commerce Commissioner, Jay Schuler, said North Dakota exports 84% of its crops, worth $3.5 billion, to Mexico and Canada. I'm surprised about that because Canada does grow their own wheat. Withdrawing from NAFTA would subject these products to high foreign tariffs. Republicans also hope to flip the Senate seats in Missouri, Indiana, both of which Trump carried by 19 points. But that was a fluke. GOP is fighting to keep governorships in Iowa and in Kansas, which the president carried by 9 and 21 points, 9 points in Iowa. But that was a fluke within itself also. Iowa should flip to the Democrats. These campaigns will be much more difficult if the farm economies are ruined by NAFTA terminations. Missouri is a major producer of corn, soybeans, beef, and turkeys. Indiana is corn and soybeans. Of course, Iowa is corn, soybeans, pork, and Kansas is wheat, corn, and beef. Much of this is exported to Mexico. If the U.S. piled on NAFTA, Mexico would snap back to 75% on American chickens. High fructose corn syrup, they should get rid of it. Potatoes, 45% on turkeys, 25% on beef. The former governor of North Dakota, Dermipper, anyway, whatever his name is, it takes a long time to develop foreign customer relationships. Once disrupted, these ag markets won't come back quickly, no doubt about that. Then there are the car-making states, almost a quarter century since NAFTA went into effect. The automobile industry has built a hemispheric supply chain to help it compete with Europe and the Asian car makers. Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee each have important Senate races, but Indiana has a governor's contest. In each of these states, at least 9% of the workforce is tied to automobiles. In Michigan, the figure is at 20%, and without President Obama, it would not be that. The Republicans were going to let the automobile industry in Michigan fall to the ground, so to speak. These exports of cars and automobile parts range from $5.9 billion in Tennessee to $26 billion in Michigan. Never fear, more automobile companies are moving towards Tennessee. If Trump makes good on his NAFTA pledge, he would disrupt the automobile chain. They're making American-made cars more expensive at home, less competitive abroad. He doesn't really want to blow these states' economy, along with roughly a dozen other states with automotive production, including Missouri and West Virginia, with very little in West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. I haven't gotten to the critical election in border states like Texas and Arizona. Well, Arizona is trending more blue every day, which have important way stations for trade with Mexico. No doubt about that, particularly in Texas. A lot of the economy in Texas is there. Let's go now to the ball scores from Friday night. The Spurs were at the Raptors in Toronto, 86 to 83. The Raptors over the Spurs. The Heat was in New York. The Nets 101 to 95 for the Heat. The Wizards were at the Pistons in the Motor City. Wizards 122 to 112. The Kings were at the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies 106 to 88. The Suns were at the Nuggets in Denver. Suns 108 to 100 for the Nuggets. High scoring game there. The Knickerbockers were at the Jazz. A 2-pointer there. The Knicks 117. The Jazz 115. And finally, the Pacers were in Los Angeles. The Lakers finally won the game 99 to 86. That's the NBA. Let's make a quick stop at college basketball, men's basketball, I guess they call it. Indiana and number 9, Michigan State. 85, Michigan State, Indiana. Basketball state, 57. I'm thinking of Butler University there. One of the professors that I deal with, E. Jordan, used to be a professor at Butler College, it was called in. Anyway, nonetheless, the Golden Knights and the Panthers 4-3 over the Golden Knights of Las Vegas and the Florida Panthers, the Kings and the Ducks. Ducks 2-1 there. The Anaheim Ducks and the LA Kings. That was the final there. The Canucks and Capitals. Canucks 3-2. The Montreal Canadiens. Did I say the Canucks? I'm sorry, the Canadiens. From Montreal, and the Capitals from Washington, D.C. That does it for sports. We'll have a numbers man. That's our macroeconomics program. We'll talk about the Beige Book. Those are the financial conditions in the various Fed districts. That'll be a big item there. And we'll have some other things. We'll talk about the shutdown and its potential economic impact there. Not having a budget in place. Not raising the deficit. That will be a major item we'll talk about on Numbers Man. And on the open source reports, which we will have this week, we'll talk about the chips, the meltdown, and let me just bring a little brief preview up in here. Updates. Now, this is the AMD process is also in the mix with these impacts here. The Spectra virus, Spectra and the meltdown, those are two things. The Project Zero variant. Spectra, we believe of this threat that could be contained in the operating system patch. This is from AMD. Linux vendors also rolling out patches across the AMD product line. We saw some of that going on here, and the branch target injection or Spectra, and how it is with AMD here, rogue data load, and these are some of the alternative names. We'll get this on the open source report. The rogue data cache load or meltdown is not in the AMD process, as you heard it here. Again, the shutdown continues, and we'll get the latest from the Post here and look, because this is shutdown begins. That's basically all they said. Period here, and a lot of massive confusion. I guess we'll get to this. We didn't get to it before, but the government prepares shutdown. They've already done that. The Secretary, Mad Dog Mathis, he's the Defense Secretary, said about half the Pentagon's civilian workers would be sent home without pay. Maintenance would cease, and some intelligence operations overseas would stop. The Commerce Department sent talking points to managers to tell furloughed workers to set out of office voicemail messages, take their office plants home. I mean, this varies. The Environmental Protection Agency, this is the Pruitt there, has roughly 15,000 workers to report on Monday. And how they're reporting, I have no idea. And Rex Tillerson, he is the Minister of State or Secretary of State, what do you want to call him. He is leaving Monday for a trip to Europe, and he'll be at the World Economic Forum. Incidentally, on Numbers Man, we'll have special coverage of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And DJ Trump is going to be there. He's even going to take the conservative caucus leader with him and some other nutcase. I'm not sure if he's taking this Mickey Mulvaney with him or not. He's the budget director anyway. Maybe the Treasury Secretary he's taking. But it's a whole game. The government will spend $4.1 trillion this year. Roughly 30% of that is appropriated each year by Congress. About half of that money goes to the military, about half to a dozen federal agencies. When there's a shutdown, as in this case, a partial one, lawmakers have to pass a budget, or have passed one for the Veterans Administration. So they will be open, and of course the Postal Service is not part of the government. They will be open also. So some of the things that will be open, some of the things will not be open. What the administration is doing is using account trickery to keep parts of the government open. Then it's not shut down at all. That's from Bill Hoagland, senior vice president of the Bipartisan Policy Center and a former budget advisor to several Republican types. If the agencies were to stay open using White House strategy, he added, you're going to have budget lawyers working overtime and with potential lawsuits, no doubt about that. Trump and his deputies continue to attack the Democrats. Well, that's no big deal right there. The next pay period for many workers will be on the 26th. They will be paid for work through this past week. So that's a big hardship there. From the Tony Reardon, he's president of the National Treasury Employees Union, which represents 150,000 federal workers and 30 different agencies not there. Our employees right now at this late hour are still waiting to get their notices. He said he worries that Congress will not ensure that they are paid after the shutdown ends. Now that is a big problem right there. Center for Disease Prevention and Control and Prevention, that's in Atlanta, Georgia, said 60% of its workers, about 8,050, home. So in other words, a lot of workers are going to be off of duty, and Transportation Safety Board shut down halt key airline of investigations there. That's from the Transportation Safety Board. It said 95% of its more than 400 workers would be furloughed. Not very many workers involved there. But they're very, very important workers. National Park Service issued a contingency plan on Friday evening outlining how to access public lands would be maintained to the greatest extent under the shutdown. And I think we didn't talk about this. We talked about the Death Valley Park, but this is the big-cypress-national-preserve in Florida. Some of the buildings will be shut as soon as Saturday, although as much of the park, 76,000 acres, will remain open to visitors. The park is home to some of the largest alligators and pythons around. So they will be there. Nonetheless, this will do it for us. We'll see you on the Monday morning quarterback on a Monday morning, and we'll be no doubt talking about the effects of the shutdown. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you Monday morning on many of these outlets, as we normally do. You can catch us on iHeart. You can catch us on Stitcher. No, I said Snitcher. Anyway, you can catch us there. You can catch us on Speaker. And also from Speaker, you can get us on Sonar. You can get us on Echo, the Amazon voice-activated speakers. That is becoming very, very big. I was talking to H about that and some of the things the BBC is doing with their program in conjunction with these voice speakers. For those that have those kind of voice-activated speakers, you just say Boston Red, and before that, I believe you would say iHeartRadio or Spreaker, Boston Red, Sonar, we are there, and many more of these are coming up.